Hey everyone. Well, you'll notice we're doing a different creative conversation today. I'm actually in studio or in office with Lisa Sauve, who I'm going to introduce in just a second. You're not going to want to miss this. If you don't yet know who Lisa is, she's going to hate that I'm saying she's kind of a big deal. Okay, she's kind of a big deal. She's kind of changing the world here in Metro Detroit and beyond. But first, I want to tell you some things about Creative Conversations and what's going on. So for those of you who are new to me, hello, welcome. My name is Laura Khalil, and I am really dedicated to rebalancing the scales of financial justice in favor of women and minorities. Lisa, did you know only 2% of women-owned businesses make it past the $1 million mark annually?
Only because you told me.
Only because I keep saying it to everyone I can. Okay, and I am on a mission to change this and to help make women rich. And part of the reason for that is because I think we do better in our communities when we give back. So if that is of interest to you, head on over to Brave by Design. You can actually check out the calculator we have right on the homepage if you want to accelerate your revenue in the next 3 months. We make it super easy to help you dream big. Without further ado, I really want to, I'm so excited that Lisa's here with us. Lisa Sauve is the founder of si-nek-duh-kee, which, hang on, Lisa, let me see, how did you describe this? A multidisciplinary design studio in Ann Arbor and here in Detroit as well. Lisa, your story is so inspiring. One, because you're an architect by training, correct?
Yep.
And you kind of didn't start your architecture career the way that most people are taught to do that. Can you tell us a little bit more about your journey?
Yeah. So I guess we'll start with the typical architecture career. So everybody has a baseline, which is an architecture license, which gives you the freedom to stamp and make buildings and things. Requires a typical master's degree, 2 to 3 years under an architect, being reviewed with different hours in different sort of expertise areas, and then taking 6 different regulated tests. So imagine the bar exam times 6 for a lawyer to be an architect.
Okay.
So for myself, we graduated in 2009. When I say we, it's my partner Adam and I. He was a boyfriend at the time. We figured out how to work really well together in studio. Awesome. So middle of recession, architecture definitely first thing to get hit, last thing to recover. So there were no jobs. And so we decided to make our own. So the first thing we did was we found a job on Craigslist, skipped graduation, and did a piece of work. Yep. Back when Craigslist was like marketplace or whatever, that was like looking for hired help, graphic design office in Detroit said, hey, we've got a little space. How can we do this?
So you just bypassed all the steps you were supposed to take.
We bypassed everything. We didn't even finish our undergrad degree. We skipped graduation because we were already building the thing. So,
why did they have confidence in you to do this? They knew you were students. They knew you actually had not graduated, had barely graduated. What gave them confidence to work with you?
Well, one, they had a little budget. Only so many people would pull it off. They were really looking for like somebody to decorate their office. And what we pitched them was, one, we showed them a design early on, which we don't do anymore. So nobody gets to see a design until they sign up. But in that case, we really did need to kind of buy in confidence as the first project, showed them a design scheme that included custom furniture and all this stuff still within budget. And they said, okay, you're imagining this completely different than what we were doing. Let's just do it.
Okay. And so that was the first project.
That was the first project. And we won World's Coolest Office for adaptive reuse that year with Inc.com magazine and Architizer. So it was kind of validation that we had something going on.
And at any point, so after you completed that project or in the middle of completing that project, was part of you thinking, okay, that was fun, but now I got to go like put on my big girl pants and go get
master's degree.
I gotta go take all these tests. I gotta go find some architect to work under. Was any of you thinking, okay, now that's the next step? This was just like a one-off. Or were you just like, wheels, we're going?
No, I mean, like they had to give us a check to this kind of faux company, si-nek-duh-kee, that we made up. And so to be able to cash that check, we needed to get a bank account. The bank laughed at us when we tried to like cash it under our own personal checking accounts. So like, no, this check is not written out to you. So very quickly, we figured out how to form an LLC, get an EIN, and open a
Oh my God.
commercial banking account.
Hilarious.
Yep. So at
Okay.
that point, it was like, oh, now we're a business.
Mhm.
And then we went to grad school that fall. We actually presented at a Pechaksha that fall.
Oh yeah.
About si-nek-duh-kee.
Okay.
So we were like living this reality
And
that
were,
si-nek-duh-kee was a design firm.
and you were in grad school.
And we were in grad school, yeah.
Okay, and then what happens?
So after that first project, we were like, okay, that wasn't too bad. Let's just do a project a year, right? So
Okay.
that was like our baseline. So we weren't thinking like, this will be our jobs.
Mhm.
Immediately, we knew there were some hurdles and things. So we set a baseline of one project a year. So the next summer, we did a artist studio for a friend in his backyard that we
Okay.
built. And then we won a international competition in Atlanta before we graduated from our master's. And
Oh wow.
so then we ended up going down to Atlanta to build this pavilion. So that was kind of, another project for the year. And so, yeah, it kind of kept like that rigor and
Sounds like it
accountability
kind of
for us.
snowballed.
I mean, it was still just one project a year, right, for a little while, but it kept us accountable to that goal. And then we worked for our thesis advisors for about a year and a half. We had to do another project. There was food carts around the corner. One of them we caught wind was going to be a brick and mortar. So we ate there every day and handed them our card and said, hey, let us know when you're ready to go. We'd love to design your space. And so that was like our first permitted project.
Do we know are they still around?
So it's the lunchroom in Ann Arbor. So pretty great vegan food that you wouldn't know. They've split into two locations, merged back together. So now you know them as Detroit Filling Station.
Oh, right on. Okay, so then you work under your advisors, you finish your master's degree, and then
I'm still not an architect.
you're still not an architect.
Still not an architect. Then I actually went and got another master's degree.
Oh my God.
Just for kicks. I mean, at some point you're like, might as well. We were like teaching gig economy, right? Do a project, do some other things on the side. I went and got my master's of science in conservation, which is different than preservation, still under the architecture realm, but it's more like conserving culture as a whole instead of thinking about freezing buildings and preservation.
Okay.
So did that. Once we came back, we actually got 3 projects. This is where the momentum really built.
Okay.
And that's when we kind of like quit all of our gigs and really started si-nek-duh-kee full time.
Let me ask you, are you an architect?
I am now an architect. All of this, still not an architect. So I think 2015, we leased the space, we hired an employee. We're not architects, we have multiple jobs. And so that's when we started working with an architect of record. So finding a licensed architect that would review our designs, add any kind of details and things, and then seal those drawings for permit and construction. And so we're working in collaboration with other architects to be able to fill that gap of legal requirements and expertise to sign up on all those projects.
And is that still the case today?
No.
Okay.
So yeah, after 3 or 4 years of that momentum building, other architects in the community saw this more as a liability and being deceitful. Their words, not ours. And so kind of called us out. We went to the governing board of appeals at the state level for the Architecture Association. We explained all that we were doing with an architect record and things like that. And that's when, they were like, this is fine or whatever. And I was like, I can't deal with this anymore. Like a lot of this kind of old school flack.
Right.
And so I just kind of barrowed down and took all the tests and
So you did take all those tests?
I did take all those tests. Can I swear on this?
Yeah, sure.
Because I was just like, fuck these guys. Time to just go get licensed and shut them up for good now.
And now they're out of your way.
Yeah, there's not really much more complaining they can do.
Well, so the thing I love about this story is, and you and I have talked, you just do things differently. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on this conversation, is because Lisa just doesn't do things. And this is, I think, one of what's so innovative about you and interesting is you shake shit up. I mean, like, so this way of getting into architecture, sort of breaking the rules, but more like saying, this is bullshit. I think it's stupid. I don't think we need to do it that way. This is sort of like also filtered into how you design and sort of the vision for si-nek-duh-kee as well, right?
Yep. I mean, so even getting my hours working with an architect, a lot of those hours were either through the architecture record in collaboration or with my thesis advisors and their academic kind of work. So I've never worked in an architecture firm. And so I don't really know the way they do things. I get glimpses of it from our employees who have, past experience
from that world,
telling me, oh my God, this is so refreshing. But like from our end, we're just doing it the way we think it should be done. And we started our careers the way we saw an opportunity.
One thing I love about you, as we were talking before we started recording, you guys know I'm very focused on those revenue goals. I like that personally. And so Lisa and I were chatting about that. And you said something really interesting to me. You said, I'm not as much about revenue and you're more about impact. Tell us more about that.
It's very hard to measure, but I think it keeps us going, right? It keeps the fight in us alive. So we are in the 2%, so we're $1 million revenue company. But for us, like growing more just to do more work and generate more revenue really isn't a goal, because we could do that all day long, working with franchises, working with corporate, projects and things like that. But it doesn't move the needle when we talk about the built environment. So for us, we're taking on projects really intentionally, that we can like look at specific details within a project that kind of put into question what the building code's actually asking, how people use the space, like what is that program?
So what does that mean? Like for someone who doesn't, for us lay people, how is that different? How does that translate?
So one project that we did, and we were talking about this like as a team, like what are our favorite projects and why. We did Nightcap, which is a bar in Ann Arbor. And we convinced the owners, who were very supportive, they delayed the project by 3 months to see this through, to do fully gender neutral bathrooms. And what that meant was we had toilet rooms, right? Like just lockable toilet rooms, and then universal sink area. So not just individual toilet sink rooms. And so we had to go to the Building Board of Appeals to fight this.
Because it's not allowed in Ann Arbor.
It's not allowed in Michigan. So building code is state by state. Almost every state adopts the same international building code that's done nationally. And so right now, even on the books for Michigan, based on the year that we have adopted, it is legally required to gender identify every single bathroom. So even if you have a single user bathroom, which is just one sink and toilet, you have to gender it.
Okay.
And so we fought that, got it all approved.
How did you get that approved?
So it was kind of a balancing act of showing how we still met the intended code with toilet rooms and sinks. So the fixture quantity, the accessibility, and as a historic building, the kind of nuance of how much space we had to play with, and that this was a more
you fit code.
Okay. Yep. So we still fit code in terms of where they were considering life safety and welfare, right? And so anything beyond that, we argued that how the code is written is over and above those things, and it's unnecessary. And times have changed, and we need to stop thinking.
And they agreed.
And they agreed.
All right. And so then what happened next?
So, I mean, a couple things happened next. We did a bar in the basement. We did the same thing. That was like, we only required 2 more bathrooms. So we just did 2 full use bathrooms, but we actually were on a national panel called Solve, which was talking all about bathrooms and kind of this. It was a 2-day conference
on
about bathrooms. But
wow.
Yep. I love bathrooms. I could talk about those for 3 days.
You could talk about bathrooms.
There's so many, right? Like one, if wherever you go look at the bathroom. If it looks hokey or just like a shortcut, who knows what other shortcuts people are taking, right? Like it seems like a leftover place, and it just shows who actually takes care of every detail versus who might take shortcuts. All in all, bathrooms are also like a very social justice place. Like if you think about where mothers like if they're sitting on a toilet versus having a lactation room,
Mhm.
if we're talking about gender, if we're talking about accessibility, mobility issues, all of those things really come into play when you talk about human necessity in a bathroom.
You know, it's funny. So we're in a space right now that Lisa actually designed. And I'm thinking, now that I'm thinking about bathrooms, I'm realizing that in our space here, we have gender neutral bathrooms. Is that something you also had to fight for?
No, because these ones as full single user bathrooms, it's not that that multiple genders are sharing sinks or anything like that. That can meet code. What we did was we put male and female signs up, took them down, put the gender neutral signs up after we passed inspection. Which is kind of how all inspectors look at it. Like they know it's like a thing, but they're like, we can't officially. Anyway, so we went to that conference, and one of the things that we got feedback on was, what if you put a urinal in there? There's actually not a lot of places to privately use a urinal. And when you think about the trans community, learning how to use different fixtures and things like that, wouldn't it be great? And like homes don't typically have urinals either. There's not a lot of places to use them without, either stigma
Kind of being
or
semi-public.
Yeah, exactly. So we put a urinal in one of the single users to accommodate that kind of opportunity as well. And then we had an employee that was working with us at the time on that project. She went on to a corporate office, ended up working on the LinkedIn offices. Took a lot of how we fought those codes and influence, and just even the argument of why this makes a better project. LinkedIn said, yep, we totally agree with this. We're going to do it on this project, and going forward, this is going to be company policy that all of our built offices are going to require the same thing.
So now LinkedIn, based on having that one employee who learned how you guys were doing things differently and fighting for what we believe is right, and kind of how times have evolved and how understanding of gender has evolved, they've adopted gender neutral bathrooms. That's really cool.
So we didn't have to work with LinkedIn, although we will. But the idea,
are you listening?
You're welcome, LinkedIn, even though you don't know we exist. But the idea that that's measured impact that isn't revenue based. And that feels like a better form of success for us and what we're doing.
Now, at the same time though, okay, so there's some interesting things here, because yes, impact is important, but yes, you're also making money. You guys are not starving. You are at above that 2% mark that we talked about, $1 million in revenue a year. So is there for you a balance in there at all of like, these are the a lot of people, especially in agencies, will say, well, this is the project I have to take. A lot of people will get into that thinking, well, I have to take this to pay the bills, and then that'll afford me other opportunities. That's how a lot of people think, Lisa. So how do you deal with that?
Like one of our mottos is do good work. And really kind of what it boils down to is good work rewards more work, right? And so by doing a certain level of work that we push ourselves towards, it attracts clients at both ends of the spectrum, right? Like doing good attracts kind of the local and the advocate groups that we want to work with, but also the tech companies, that want their space to look different, feel different, and kind of advance things. And so we have been able to attract both ends of those, that the higher paying clients have been able to offset some of the other projects that we do want to take on that might break even, or we put a little extra effort in.
But I'm guessing you don't take any work on you don't want to do.
Correct. One of our kind of baselines, so we'll talk to you LinkedIn, but also we really need to talk to you. Because one of our baselines is like, we don't do franchise work because the ingredients are already boiled out. It's hard to like question the purpose and intent. Really, you're just kind of rubber stamping
what they've already come up with.
And it's really hard for us to work with large corporations unless we can talk to the owners, founders, or leaders, because a project manager is given a directive to deliver versus the leader who is continuously setting kind of vision and purpose. And we think that boils down into the space that that company might occupy. And so We've worked on projects where we've worked with a project manager, but I've sat down with the CEO at the beginning and be like, I need your cell number. Like, I need to be able to text you and be like, hey, we're working on this thing. I want you to get into this meeting this week because I want to do something different and I need your voice of approval or else they won't get it.
I want to just cue back to something I've talked about with the audience before. This is really important because, Lisa, what you're describing of these are the people we don't work with, and these are the requirements we have if we do work with you. That's part of what we call our red velvet rope policy. In if you're coaching with me, if you've worked with me, you've heard me talk about this before. It's okay to say no to things. It's okay to say, I just don't do this stuff, probably because I don't do my best work when I am constrained by those limitations. And if one of your mottos is do good work, because good work begets more good work, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. All right. So one of the things you're doing in terms of impact is around small businesses. A lot of people will shy away from working with small business because they'll feel like there's no money in it. I'm going to run myself ragged. You have taken, again, a totally different approach, Lisa. Again, just like totally different. Tell us more about how you guys work with small businesses because it's really unique.
So after working with a good handful of small businesses, in architecture, we have like post-occupancy analysis, right? And they can get really onerous to total research of what, like in an office, is this conference sheet room getting used versus that one, at what percentage rates and things like that. Us, it's more like having a beer with the owners and say, how's it going? And all of them, from when we started this 3 years ago, said we're doing better than our best pro forma. Right.
Wow.
So every small business puts, their worst case, best case scenario. They hope to hit somewhere in between. And if worst and best case both sit in the black, they're like, yes, let's do this thing. Right. It's kind of your litmus.
Yeah.
And so when they say they're doing better than their best, we think that the design and the engagement and the kind of questioning into their business model and how we translate that into space had something to do with that financial success.
Yeah, for sure.
And so kind of the light bulb went off and we're like, how are we not recouping from that value add? And so when we think about it, we're like, all right, you have this giant kind of margin that you didn't expect to make, right? Like there's profit above your expected profit. Let's take a slice of that sort of thing. Okay. And so we started talking to future clients about equity share on revenue share models. And we said, hey, one, we understand small businesses are cash strapped on the front end. So hiring a designer is really hard to do. When you're thinking about all the things you're throwing your cash at, your friends and family, money, things like that. So what if you didn't pay us? We figure out the allocation of what our value is, which is generally, how much time we are going to put into it, what our fee would have been.
Are they paying cost of materials?
No. So depending on, what we're doing, because we have a fabrication shop too, we'll cover cost of materials. Wow. So we've got to manage our own cash flow kind of on that end, right? Because I'm paying payroll for our team to help design this thing and materials for any kind of custom furniture that we might be building for the space. But overall, we'll kind of figure out the allocation, write up a general operating agreement, right? That everyone should have. And put in a percentage of equity in that thing. And then we get long-term passive revenue because architecture is always chasing the next thing and the next thing, right? You're always looking for the next service fee. And
it's so interesting. It's so interesting too for service providers to hear that of like, if I know my work can create this kind of impact, and I've seen it, I've had repeatable success in this area, how can I do things to generate passive revenue? Like if I know I'm going to hit it out, if I know I'm going to get another winner, because I always get winners when I do this stuff. Do you have, how do you vet those clients?
Yeah, right. It's not that every client that comes to us and says, we want to give you 20% to our project. We're like, I don't want to take 20% liability as well, right? Because there's equity, there's profit sharing, and then there's like performance bonuses or like the tiers of risk, right? So you can get a performance bonus and like just get cash out in the end, if you hit, below budget, under timeline sort of thing, you can get profit sharing, which just means, yeah, if you hit above that exceptional revenue, you just get a slice of that. And then there's full on equity, which means risk reward. A lot of the time we are working kind of in that equity territory. And so vetting is really important because we're passive. They are the managing members. They are responsible for running that business. They need to be experts in the field. So, right, like we've invested in a hair salon. I know nothing about hair. I just kind of grow it out.
I mean, your hair looks fantastic.
Thanks. I just don't cut it.
Do they actually give you haircuts?
Adam gets haircuts like every 6 weeks. It's great.
Okay.
I was cutting his hair beforehand because I was like, oh, I can figure this out.
Right.
So I got yelled at by my partners because they were like, you need to stop cutting your own hair. You own a salon now. But they are experts, right? Like they are master stylists. They know their business. I don't know the hair. This was our first hair salon, so I really let them go. But in a lot of these too, like si-nek-duh-kee has opened several bars and restaurants, more than several small businesses that we've worked with, right? This might be the first bar that they've ever opened. They might have worked in bars, but they've never opened one. And so we actually have more experience opening some of these businesses than they do.
Because you've done it so many times.
And so we've become a partner and an advisor in terms of preparing certain applications that they might not be aware of, the hurdles that might be involved, the timelines they might not have expected, the bureaucracy of the whole thing.
I just have so many questions about this. This is so fascinating. So you're working with an organization, and let's just pick a fictitious one. You own a pet store. Okay. And the pet store is tanking. So you've done your design, you've done everything you thought would help. You vetted these people, and then for whatever reason, it's not doing well. What do you do in those scenarios? Or what would you do in those scenarios?
I mean, knock on wood, so far, everybody's been doing good. I mean, COVID, right, was wild. Like, we're like, everybody just hold on, and we all made it through. No other expectations than holding on to the ship. But for something like that, right, we look and say, like, where is it, right? Is it in the people? Is it in the space? Is it that we have issues with the retail side? Is there a service component to it? Like, do we need to make tweaks to how much product we're stocking? Do we need to modify the retail design?
And so you would go in and perform part of this analysis anyway. That's awesome. That's super cool. How many businesses have you invested in at this point?
4.
Okay.
It's only been 3 years.
And are you kind of doing one a year? Is that the plan? Because I know you talked about one a year when you were in when you were in school. We're just going to try one a year. Or do you want to divulge this? You don't have to. I'm just curious.
Well, it's interesting because we do it on kind of two. One side is businesses and one side is development. So in this space, in Bamboo, we are actually an equity partner, not in Bamboo. We don't have any equity stake in the business itself, but we bought this building together and we renovated it. So on that side too, we knew that we were going to increase the value of the building itself based on the design, right? And so, yeah, between those, it just kind of depends. I don't think there's too much of a target.
Okay.
At one point I was like, I want to own 10 businesses by the time I'm 40. So I'm like 35 now. I don't think it's actually too hard, but you know, it's really more about like when opportunity arises, finding that right fit.
And here's, okay, so part of it is being an owner or co-owner in those businesses. But again, let's talk about the impact, because I want to go back to that. Why have you chosen to do this? What is the impact you're trying to make?
Yeah, it's really not a big investment strategy, right? But the more we show by example that we should be investing, like we're investing in small businesses in the same kind of buy local mentality. And that we want to see more unique small businesses of people doing their best work in their expert field. And so the best way we can make sure that they launch, that they have the assistance to launch, and that they have a spectacular space to do that work is to invest in them. And in the end, we built a stronger, better, more unique and diverse community that gives us the type of community we want to work in. Like, I don't want to work in a corporate field of a city, right?
Yeah,
That
totally.
every block is a franchise. So
we're not trying to call out Royal Oak, Michigan right now. We're calling you out. Lisa, this has been incredible, so inspiring. For people who, I don't know, what advice do you have to service providers, designers, architects, creatives who maybe they've been in their careers for a while, maybe they're just starting. What would you say to them if they want to grow? What was a great piece of advice either you've learned along the way or anything you want to share?
I think like abnormally, right? Like we did not look at architecture firms a lot. Like I know overall our industry is doing very much what we've been doing for the last 100 years. Like nothing's changed. I can go into billable hours for quite a long time too. But I don't think our time is the most valuable thing we contribute. So, but I would say like we've always looked at other industries to kind of figure out what's doing differently and what we do and don't want to do, right? So working with a lot of tech companies, we get a lot about the kind of culture, HR and things like that, and the startup world and kind of the grit that goes into it. But like, we're not interested ourselves in being invested in what that means for accountability to revenue and kind of exits. So you kind of learn both sides from different industries. And I would say like this, we look at chefs and kitchens a lot too, right? So we can imagine how one restaurant can have an impact to the entire culinary world based on the menu, right? It doesn't mean that you need 100 restaurants to have the impacting 100 restaurants sort of thing. So I think really figuring out like how you scale yourself and your impact is really important.
I have so much to chew on myself. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Lisa.
Thanks for having me.
And I'm going to tag her. You guys find Lisa, find her design firm. And until next time.